What happens when a late night host forgets the cameras are rolling and shows us who he really is? The studio lights were bright, but the energy had turned cold. The audience, normally laughing and clapping, now sat frozen, watching something unfold that no one expected. Stephen Colbert leaned forward, the familiar smile gone. In its place, something sharper, something colder. Meghan Markle had stepped onto the late show stage expecting warmth, wit, and the usual softball questions. Instead, what followed would shake millions of viewers and reveal a side of Stephen few had ever seen. But before we unpack this explosive moment, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think really happened that night behind the scenes. The interview began as expected. Meghan entered to thunderous applause, dressed simply in a sleek black gown, her smile polished and camera-ready. Stephen rose to greet her, his expression neutral, maybe even tense. He offered his hand. She took it. They sat. But sharp eyes would have caught it, the stiffness in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped a little too hard against his note cards. "So, Meghan?" Stephen began with a casual tone that didn't quite match his eyes. "Lovely to have you here. Tell me, how does it feel to be on an actual talk show instead of, another one of your carefully controlled podcasts where you vet every single question?" The audience gave a nervous laugh. Meghan's smile faltered, barely. "Well, Stephen," she replied calmly, "I think different formats allow for different types of connection. Not everything has to be adversarial." Stephen's eyebrow lifted. Adversarial. Huh, interesting word. So, interviews where someone might actually challenge you are adversarial now. Meghan shifted slightly in her seat. "That's not what I meant. I just think long-form conversations can give space to share without interruption." "Without interruption," Stephen repeated slowly, like the words tasted bitter. "You mean like your Oprah interview, where no one was allowed to fact-check anything you said? Silence. Total silence. This wasn't the cheeky Colbert who danced and joked with movie stars. This was something else entirely." Meghan sat up straighter. "Everything I shared was my truth, my lived experience. I don't see why you're bringing this up now." Stephen leaned in. "Your truth," he said pointedly, "not the truth. That's what fascinates me. It's not about facts, it's about what you feel. As if reality is whatever fits your version of the story." Meghan's tone sharpened. "I'm not sure where this hostility is coming from. I came here to talk about my charity work." Stephen gave a low, humorless chuckle. "Oh, right. Another charity initiative. Another cause. Another brand extension dressed up as moral high ground." Meghan's hands clenched around the arms of her chair. "I think you have a serious misunderstanding of what happened." Stephen pulled a card from his desk, almost theatrically. "Funny. I have a few questions here my producers begged me not to ask. Said it would be too much. Said you'd been through enough. But honestly, I'm tired of watching people like you cry victim from a 16 million mansion." Meghan's voice was barely above a whisper. "People like me." Stephen waved a hand, dismissive. "Don't make this about race. This is about character. This is about someone who married into the most famous family on earth and then acted shocked when people took photos." He didn't stop. "You complained about not being paid for royal tours while wearing designer clothes worth more than most people's yearly salary." Meghan's voice cracked. "You have no idea what it was like. The threats, the constant scrutiny, the way they came after my child. Every public figure deals with threats." Stephen fired back. "Every celebrity loses privacy. But most don't run to Oprah to drag their family while they're 99. Your old grandfather is dying in the hospital." The camera caught it. The moment Meghan's composure cracked. Her eyes glistened, her lip trembled, but Stephen wasn't finished. "You want to know what really bothers me?" he said, his voice low and cutting. "The hypocrisy. You claim you want privacy, but you never stop talking. You say you want to help others, but every move feels like it's about you. You say you were silenced, But you've been everywhere since. TV, books, Netflix. You're not silent. You're amplified. That's not fair, Meghan said, her voice shaking. Stephen leaned back. No, what's not fair is accusing the royal family of racism without saying who, and then letting speculation run wild. That's not bravery. That's calculated. And in that moment, the studio knew. This wasn't an interview. It was an unmasking. Was it fair? Stephen said coolly. When you claimed Kate made you cry, even though multiple sources say it was the other way around. Meghan's jaw tightened. Sources, she repeated bitterly. You mean palace sources? The same machine that protected some while feeding others to the wolves. Stephen rolled his eyes. You weren't thrown to any wolves. You were handed a global platform, a royal title, every designer label under the sun. You had a staff, a palace, the world at your feet, and you still found a way to complain. Complain. Meghan shot to her feet, her chair scraping violently against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be disrespected like this. Stephen rose as well, slow and deliberate. No, you don't. Just like you didn't have to honor the commitments you made to the British people. Just like you didn't have to stay and serve. Once it got hard. Running. That's always been the easiest option, hasn't it? The tears were coming now. Meghan's face was flushed, her breath shallow. She stood frozen between her chair and the exit. Phones were coming out, despite the studio's strict note-recording policy. Stephen's voice dropped to a near whisper, barely picked up by the boom mics. You know what the saddest part is? You had everything. A chance to do real good. A global platform, a family. One that welcomed you, despite what you keep insisting. But because it wasn't exactly how you imagined, you set it all on fire. Meghan wiped at her tears, her hand trembling. For a second, it looked like she might leave. But then something shifted. She turned back, her eyes still glassy, but her voice steady and cold. You want to talk about duty, she said. Let's talk about smiling through headlines, comparing your unborn child to a monkey. Let's talk about being suicidal while pregnant and told you can't get help because it would look bad. Let's talk about being branded a threat to the monarchy because you dared to speak. Stephen sat back down slowly, never breaking eye contact. Everyone in public life faces criticism, he said. You knew what you were marrying into. Did I? Meghan asked, still standing. Did I know they'd monitor my mail? Take my passport. Forbid me from seeing friends because I was oversaturating the media, while other royals got glowing coverage daily. Stephen shrugged. You're not a prisoner. You were a duchess. You had privileges most people only dream about. Meghan's voice broke. Privileges like being told my son wouldn't be given security. Watching my husband beg his father for protection while being stonewalled. And now you, sitting in your studio, with your tailored suit and clever cue cards, think you get to judge me. I get to ask what no one else will, Stephen replied. Like why you chose to do a all interview while Prince Philip was on his deathbed. Why every single project since then? Every book, podcast, documentary, has been a re-litigation of your victimhood. Why you won't move on? Meghan's voice cracked, tears streaming again. Because people like you won't let me. Every time I try to do something good, it gets twisted. Every speech is called performative. Every charity initiative labeled a PR stunt. You don't want healing. You want to see me punished. Stephen leaned in. Or maybe we just want consistency. You say you want privacy, but you film your life. You say you want to help people, but you charge 5 figures to speak. You say you were silenced. Yet we can't go a week without hearing your side of the story. Meghan's voice dropped to a whisper. You're twisting everything. No, Stephen replied. I'm doing what the tabloids did, but to your face. He reached for another card. Let's talk about the wedding. $40 million in taxpayer money for what you called a global spectacle. Then you told Oprah you were married 3 days earlier in private. So which is it? Were you lying to the Archbishop of Canterbury or to Oprah? Why exchanged personal vows? Meghan said weakly. It wasn't a legal ceremony. Stephen smirked. That's what you meant. See, that's the problem. Nothing with you is ever clear. Everything's reinterpreted, reframed, repackaged to keep you center stage. The truth is just whatever fits your script that day. The Meghan took a step forward. Her voice broke. Please, just stop. The studio was silent. No one moved, and for once even Stephen said nothing, just stared. But Stephen wasn't done. If anything, he was just warming up. His voice was louder now, sharper. No longer trying to play host, just man with a blade made of words. You want to know why people really have a problem with you? He asked, leaning in. It's not your race. It's not jealousy. It's not tall poppy syndrome, or whatever deflection is trending this week. He paused just long enough for the words to sting. It's because you brand yourself as a humanitarian, a truth teller, a survivor, while showing a stunning lack of self-awareness about your own privilege, your own choices. I never claimed to be perfect, Meghan said, voice trembling, tears threatening to spill. Stephen didn't blink. No. But you made damn sure to claim that everyone else was the problem. The royal family, the media, palace staff who you say made you cry. Everyone's cruel. Everyone's racist. Everyone's conspiring. And you. He raised his eyebrows. You're always just the poor misunderstood victim. These aren't basic questions. Meghan fired back, tears slipping now, her voice cracking. This is an ambush. This is cruel. Stephen snapped to his feet. Cruel, he said, almost laughing. Was it cruel when you implied the royal family was racist on international television without naming names? Then let the entire world speculate for months. Was it cruel when you and Harry did that mocking curtsy on Netflix, ridiculing a woman who had just died? Was it cruel when you said no one asked if you were okay, while former palace staff say they reached out again and again? The control room behind the cameras was a blur of movement now. Frantic signals from the director, hands waving, eyes wide. Stephen didn't care. I told my truth, Meghan said again. But the words sounded hollow now, even to her. Stephen's lip curled. Your truth. Not the truth. Just another version, another spin. Another carefully edited monologue where you're the brave rebel and everyone else is a villain in pearls. He leaned forward again, voice quieter but more dangerous. Do you even hear yourself anymore? Do you understand how exhausting it is for the world to keep pretending your revisionist history is somehow sacred? Meghan was shaking now. Her entire body trembled beneath the lights. You don't know me, she whispered. You don't know what I've been through. I know what you've told us. Stephen shot back. Problem is, that keeps changing. He began counting on his fingers. First, you were welcomed with open arms. Then you were shunned from day one. First, the Queen was wonderful. Then the institution was corrupt. First, you left for privacy. Then you left because of racism. He lowered his hand. So which is it? Which version are we supposed to believe this week? All of it can be true, Meghan pleaded. Life is complicated. Stephen shook his head. No, that's not complexity. That's evasion. That's saying whatever plays best in the moment and hoping no one keeps track. His voice dropped again. Either you were suicidal and received no help, or the palace offered support and you declined it. Either your son was denied a title because of his race, or he wasn't entitled yet under century-old protocol. He took one step closer to her chair. You don't get to have both, just because it makes a better headline. Meghan sank back into her seat. Her makeup had begun to run. Mascara tracing thin black rivers down her cheeks. The poise was gone. The defiance had crumbled. The woman who had walked out smiling now looked broken. Why are you doing this? She asked, almost inaudible. Why are you being so cruel? Stephen paused. Then, simply, because someone has to be. Someone has to say that crying on cue doesn't make you right. That difficult experiences don't excuse bad behavior. That playing the victim doesn't cancel the harm you've caused other people. Meghan choked back a sob. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Stephen's voice was ice. Really? You never meant to hurt the Queen when you accused her family of racism. You never meant to hurt Kate when you let the crying story hang in the air for years. You never meant to hurt the palace staff who quit after being thrown under the bus in your interviews. That's not what happened, Meghan said, but it was barely a whisper. Stephen stepped back, his voice now low and surgical. Then tell us what did happen. Give us one straight answer. One moment, just one, of actual accountability, silence. The air was thick, suffocating. No one in the audience moved. Even the camera crew had stopped. Every lens was locked on her. Admit it, Stephen said softly now. Maybe you weren't ready for royal life. Maybe it was harder than you thought. But instead of adapting, instead of learning, you blamed everyone else. You burned it all down and then complained about the smoke. Meghan's head dropped. I did my best, she said, barely audible. Stephen looked at her. Did you? Or did you do what was best for you? Because those aren't the same thing. She looked around the studio. The faces, the cameras. She looked utterly alone. And when she turned back to Stephen, something in her eyes had changed. The tears were still there, but behind them now, beneath the gloss of pain, was something deeper, not rage, not even sorrow, resignation. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe it was just the quiet realization that this conversation was never meant to go anywhere but down. You know what I think? Meghan said finally, her voice hoarse, trembling from emotion but steady in intent. I think you made up your mind about me, before I even walked out here. I think you needed a villain, and I fit the part. Stephen didn't flinch, but his expression hardened. Nothing I could say tonight was ever going to reach you, she continued. Because you're not here to understand. You're here to perform. Performing, Stephen scoffed. That's rich, coming from someone who turned their trauma into a Netflix special. At least I admit I'm telling a story. Meghan fired back. You hide behind a desk, behind satire, behind a script. You pretend to be this thoughtful, progressive ally. But the moment someone doesn't play by your rules, you turn into the exact kind of man you claim to despise. Don't turn this around, Stephen warned, his voice sharpening. Isn't it already? Meghan asked, accepting a tissue silently handed to her from offstage. She dabbed at her cheeks, then looked directly at him. You've spent 20 minutes attacking me, for being emotional, for being imperfect, for not fitting the mold of a palatable Duchess. She leaned forward. Her voice was quiet, but fierce now. But what about you, Stephen? What about your contradictions? What about your mistakes? Stephen's jaw tightened. We're not here to talk about me, he said, stiffly. No, Meghan said. We're here so you can shame a woman on national television and get your viral moment. That's the point, right? Your trending hashtag. Your brave takedown. How is that any different from what you accuse me of? Stephen started to respond, but Meghan didn't let him. Her voice gained force with every word. You want the truth. Not my truth or your truth. Fine. Here's the truth. She stood, but not to leave. This time she stood taller. I was a biracial American actress who fell in love with a prince. I walked into an institution older than my country. I tried, I failed. I struggled. I made mistakes. And I said things I regret in pain and survival mode. But I am a human being, not a headline, not a symbol, not a conspiracy. Finally, Stephen muttered. Some honesty. She ignored it. But I won't apologize for protecting my children. I won't apologize for talking about my mental health. I won't apologize for refusing to suffer in silence just to make people like you comfortable. Noble words, Stephen said with a hollow smile. But words are easy. Your actions say something else. Do they? Meghan shot back. My actions include helping raise money for fire victims, advocating for paid family leave, supporting education for women in disadvantaged communities. But none of that fits your narrative, does it? Because to you, everything I do is a PR stunt. Stephen waved his hand. You said it, not me. No, she said, her voice rising. You said it when you mocked my podcast. When you questioned my tears. When you decided there's no version of me that isn't either a fraud or a failure. You could try, Stephen said coolly, existing without constantly casting yourself as the victim. Meghan stepped forward, eyes blazing. And what are you doing right now? Playing the brave truth. Tell her while bullying a woman to tears on your show. I'm not bullying you, Stephen replied, tone flat. I'm holding you accountable. For what? Meghan demanded. For marrying Harry. For speaking. For refusing to disappear like you think I should. For lying, Stephen said. For using real issues like racism and mental health as shields against all criticism. I've never lied about either, Meghan said sharply. Stephen leaned forward. You told Oprah you were basically held hostage, but there are photos of you out at restaurants, on baby moons, at showers. You said no one helped with your mental health, but multiple palace aides say support was offered. Meghan laughed, bitter and raw. Palace sources. Anonymous voices behind layers of power, while I was bound by NDAs and protocol even then. She shook her head. How convenient for your side of the story. It's not my story, Stephen snapped. It's the story the public saw, as you cashed in on victimhood while living in homes bigger than most hospitals. And you think those homes shield you from pain? Meghan asked quietly. You think security means safety from racism, from death threats? You think privilege protects you from being broken? Stephen stared at her. I think you've gotten so used to turning pain into currency, he said slowly, that you've forgotten other people hurt too. Staff who say they were bullied, family members you've humiliated, a country you walked away from, but still trade on. Meghan's voice was soft. I didn't bully anyone. Multiple people quit, Stephen said. They filed complaints, and none of them can speak publicly. Convenient again. Meghan whispered, tears returning. You weren't there? You don't know what happened. Neither was Oprah, Stephen said. But that didn't stop you from telling your version as gospel. They stared at each other, across the table, across a war of narratives. Then Meghan's hands tightened on the edge of the desk. I think we're done here. She started to move. Running again, Stephen taunted. Is that what you do when someone won't accept your script? She turned, tear-streaked but upright, unyielding. No, she said. I'm choosing not to be part of your cruelty dressed as commentary. There's a difference. The only difference, Stephen called after her, is that tonight you don't get to blame racism, or the media, or the institution. Tonight, the world saw you. Meghan paused at the edge of the stage. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Her voice was clear, steady. What you saw, Stephen, was your own bias. Your own need to dismantle a woman who didn't obey the rules you worship. I hope someday you realize your cruelty tonight says far more about you than it ever could about me. And with that, she walked off the stage. The audience didn't move. The cameras kept rolling. Stephen sat alone. For a moment, just a blink, something flickered across his face. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't pride. It might have been regret, but only for a second. He straightened his tie, looked to the lens, smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Well, he said, that was certainly something. We'll be right back after these messages. As the lights dimmed, you could hear someone in the audience crying. The damage was done. The interview no one would forget had just become the moment everything changed. What do you think? Was Stephen right to confront contradictions? Or did he step over the line into cruelty, Let us know in the comments.